Welcome back to the Comicstorian channel, where we take some of your favorite pop culture icons from video games to movies to comic books and TV shows, and we break down the lore and storylines that exist within graphic novels, the lore behind your favorite video game, or just a rundown of the movie, and we turn it into an audio drama, allowing you to keep up to date on your favorite elements while maintaining your busy life. Today we're going to be covering Marvel Knights, Spider-Man, Last Stand, Volume 3 in a series that we've been running. Both of the original videos are down below, but for a quick rundown, in our last video, Spider-Man was faced with a harsh reality that Aunt May could possibly be dead by the hands of her kidnapper. With no one else to turn to, Spider-Man made one last attempt to talk to Norman Osborn to see if there was anything that he was missing, but Norman made it clear he wasn't interested in any of this. Now, just when things seem to be getting to their worst, Spider-Man gets a phone call by the supposed kidnapper stating that he wants Aunt May to live, so they should meet for lunch tomorrow. As the sidewalks of New York fill with busy lunchgoers, Spider-Man pushes his way through the crowds when he notices a man seemingly out of place hiding his face. He stops and the man asks if he's surprised to see him. Spider-Man asks, "What?" The man goes on stating that it must be a shock to see him as the kidnapper, right? Truth be told, he was scared the voice would give him away in the phone. Spider-Man stares at him for a moment and asks, "Do we know each other?" The man then asks, "Are you joking? Am I some second stinger now? I have to tell you? You should know who I am! Scorpion! Mac Gargan!" Without even saying a word, Spider-Man lunges forward, slamming Scorpion into the window, stating, "I am this close to breaking your neck!" Scorpion stops him, telling him, "Now those are some fancy moves. Why don't you just go on and show everyone who you are? But if you want to keep the old hag alive, you better get control of that little temper of yours." Spider-Man shouts, "Prove she's alive!" So Scorpion asks, "Are you really in any place to make demands? Now put me down before I get ticked off and walk away." Spider-Man loosens his grip, setting Scorpion down, and Scorpion tells him, "Good boy. Now let's get some lunch and discuss what you're going to do for me." As the two sit for lunch, Spider-Man asks, "How long have you known?" And Scorpion asks, "Your secret identity? Coming up in a year this Christmas." Spider-Man then asks, "If you've known for that long, why did you keep it secret? And why give the Daily Bugle $5 million? Scorpion laughs. "You really don't have a clue, huh? Who do you think hired me? This is all Norman's masterpiece, kid. The Green Goblin's revenge. You see, Norman had everything set up that if he was ever arrested or publicly exposed, this little game of yours would be cranked up to a notch or two." Spider-Man tells him, "That doesn't make any sense. If Norman was behind this, why was he so scared back at Rikers?" Scorpion tells him, "Because your aunt is just the tip of the iceberg. You ever wonder why you've always been fighting the same guys over and over again? May Parker is just an insurance policy. The real meat and potatoes of this is what's been going on in the background all of these years. Imagine it's 1945. You're one of the richest men on the planet. Girls, money, power, the American dream. And then these guys in masks show up, righting wrongs and throwing their superpowers around. After a while, they'll begin to snoop, and when they do, suddenly that American dream crumbles and they see what you're up to. So what do the people in the background do when they're faced with the people that can just walk through bullets? Easy. They create the super bad guy. Now, most of the villains back in the day were just ex-GIs on salaries. And these people, they were assigned to the heroes. It was in their contracts. There was only one or two organizations for each hero, and that's all you really need. Once you get the ball rolling, you just sit back and enjoy the fun. Take last month's auction. People were bleeding themselves dry to become an A-list villain. Spider-Man throws his hands up. "This is garbage. There's no way the government would create their own supervillains." And Scorpion tells him, "That's where you're wrong. It isn't the government, it's the companies who put the governments in office, and neutralizing the capes was a genuine business concern." Spider-Man asks, "What does any of this have to do with Norman?" Scorpion tells him, "Really? He's a billionaire, a biochemist, all of those big military contracts. Norman Osborn was their favorite supervillain contractor until he went a little nuts with the Green Goblin thing. Bush and Clinton found out about this, and they closed down any supervillain programs that they heard of. But there were some very famous names in the original cabal. That's why they want to kill Norman. He knows where all the bodies are buried. And Norman locked up in jail is the very definition of a loose cannon. As long as he's in his cell, he's a sit-in duck for any would-be assassin." Spider-Man then says, "If I was going to believe that any of this was true, why has Norman been locked up for over 3 months and no attempts at his life been made?" Scorpion tells him, "It's because Norman has plans on top of plans. Anything happens to him, emails and parcels will start reaching out to media outlets. Why do you think Oscorp has had so many break-ins lately? These guys can't pull the trigger until they cover their bases. Hell, ever wonder what happened to Doc Ock? He's been brainwashed to kill Norman. His next scheduled attempt is this weekend. That's why we need your help. Norman Osborn wants Spider-Man to break him out of prison tomorrow at midnight. Spider-Man tells him, no way, forget it. And Scorpion tells him, oh, so Aunt May's gonna die then, simple as that. Sure, you're breaking the Green Goblin out, and there's always a possibility that he's going to kill someone, but refuse and there's a guarantee that May Parker's going to die. Spider-Man slams his hand on the table asking, why are you doing this? Why go to all this trouble? It's because you raised the ante by putting Norman behind bars. You only got yourself to blame for this, kid. Now, if you excuse me, there's a new Scorpion suit waiting to be picked up that Norman arranged for me. Spider-Man tells him, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm not going to break Norman out of prison. Scorpion walks off. Sure you are, because you've already buried enough friends over the years, right? Later that night, Scorpion heads back to his apartment to try on his new suit, but just before he does, a voice tells him that new suit is to die for. Scorpion asks who there, and the voice tells him, your new best friend. We're your ticket out of the gutter. Scorpion tells him, yeah, not interested, already have enough friends. Venom looms out of the shadows telling him, sure, but you've never had a friend like me. Meanwhile, over at Spider-Man's apartment, Mary Jane throws up in the sink, shouting that he can't be serious. He's gonna break somebody like that out of prison? And that somebody is Green Goblin? Spider-Man tells him, it's what Scorpion said. There's always a risk of Norman hurting someone, but if I do nothing, Aunt May will die. Mary Jane begins to cry, stating, Norman is using you! He's pulling strings and making you dance like an idiot. Don't do this. Pete, Norman's too smart. Spider-Man hugs her, telling her, things are different now. Dr. Octopus is brainwashed to kill him, and he's vulnerable for the first time in his life. Norman promised that he'd behave. I have reason to believe that Norman is too scared to be lying this time. Besides, there's no other way to save Aunt May. As Spider-Man and Black Cat leave, Mary Jane watches in the windows and reaches into her robe, pulling out a gun. She sits down. Please, God, let me be wrong about all of this. Later at Rikers Island, Black Cat and Spider-Man sneak in with Spider-Man asking, how's it going over there? Black Cat holds up a flashlight in her mouth, stating that they're all set. Security cameras are paused across the route that Scorpion laid out for them. They got roughly 20 minutes. As Spider-Man gets to Norman's cell, he asks Black Cat if she can get a little light in there. A second later, Norman's cell lights up with him standing there, stating that he's 90 seconds behind the schedule. Spider-Man deactivates the lock, telling him to just shut up before I change my mind about this. A short while later, in the tunnels of the prison, a worker notices 3 people coming towards him, and he asks who the heck are they. The worker calls out that they have a breakout in Delta Tunnel. Tell the COs that. Before the man could finish, Norman tackles him and starts running. Spider-Man and Black Cat go after him. But just as Spider-Man reaches to help the man up that Norman knocked over, officers run over shouting, freeze. Spider-Man tries to tell them it's okay, but the officers open fire, forcing Spider-Man to dive underwater. He begins to swim back to the mainland, but that's when he notices a jet stream swirling around him. And that jet stream crashes into him, shooting him out of the water, slamming him into the ground. Hydra Man starts to form up, asking, what's the matter? Swallow a little water? And Spider-Man shouts, you idiot! What are you doing here? Hydra Man tells him, I'm making 50 grand an hour, just like Sandman's trying to capture Black Cat over there. Black Cat says that she's sorry. One of them she can handle, but Norman is now in his Green Goblin costume, flying by on his glider, stating, please, spare him. And Spider-Man shouts, asking, what is this? Norman tells him, you know exactly what this is. Did you think that this wasn't going to be a double cross? Spider-Man yells, please! Hey, I got my end of the bargain! Just tell me where Aunt May is! Norman says, I appreciate it, kid. I really do, but I got a super criminal reputation to think of. So what are you boys waiting for? Take care of Spider-Man while I dance off with his wife. Electro steps out telling Norman, you should call us what you were talking about earlier! And Norman tells him, the Sinister 12 did have a curious appeal about it. Just a shame Scorpion never appeared. While the villains start to surround Spider-Man, Scorpion then does appear, wearing the Venom suit, stating, this was supposed to be Spider-Man's last stand! I wouldn't miss it for the world! Norman flies over asking, what is this? It wasn't part of the plan. These plots are planned in phenomenal detail. You becoming Venom had nothing to do with it, Scorpion. The Scorpion asks, really? You're completely overreacting here. All I've done is made myself more powerful. This could only be good for the plan. While Norman bickers about his plan, Spider-Man kicks Sandman back, telling Black Cat, hit him while Norman's distracted. As Spider-Man jumps from person to person, Chameleon shouts, asking, can anyone hit this clown? Scorpion jumps off the building into Spider-Man, stating, relax, I'm on it. Black Cat turns to help, but Electro shocks her, telling her, don't even think about it. And Vulture yells, hey, I was supposed to get first crack at Black Cat for what she did to my face. Shocker tells him, why not just take it out on Spider-Man? He's the one who lost your grandson's money. All the villains start shouting which one should have their turn first, and that's when Scorpion grabs Spider-Man asking, "You hear that? Everyone wants a piece of you, and you know what? They're going to get it. We're going to carve our names into your corpse and hang it up on a flagpole. When we're finished with you, you're going to die here tonight. Norman's orders right here, right now, and you know what else? That pretty little redhead at home's gonna die too." Spider-Man screams, knocking Scorpion away, and the second he gets up, Hydra Man blasts him into the back, knocking him back down. The villains all take their turns getting in their shots, and while this is happening, a shadowy figure tells his team, "Get ready." Captain America jumps into the light, shouting, "All right, take them down." But back at the apartment, Mary Jane sighs, stating that she's sorry she had to make that call. Norman is going to screw him over. He is going to betray Pete. And from the darkness, Norman appears telling her, "Oh, you're a clever girl. Now it's time for you to go to sleep." Back on the coastline though, Spider-Man yells, "I have to get out of here! My wife is..." But Cap stops him. "Just go! We have these creeps under control." Spider-Man webs up, flinging himself into the air, but before he can get far, Scorpion tackles him mid-swing, sending the two of them into a nearby building. Spider-Man begins fighting back, listening to Scorpion taunt him, but Spider-Man just focuses on his punches, and that's when he notices Scorpion firing out the suit in 100 different directions. As the web is cast, Scorpion tells him, "I'm not here to kill you, just keep you busy while Norman kills Mary Jane." Spider-Man thinks to himself that Scorpion wouldn't do this. He couldn't do this. And as Scorpion pulls back on the strands, he rips apart all of the buildings that he's connected to, bringing them all down onto the street. Spider-Man's hands move faster than they ever have before, firing off his web, and right when he's done, a giant spider web covers the entire street, holding back the debris. Everyone on the street shouts to Spider-Man to kick that guy's butt for them. So Spider-Man says, "That sounds like a plan." He begins punching Scorpion over and over, and he fires more webs, with Scorpion laughing. "You missed!" As Scorpion looks back, he sees Spider-Man has webbed up an old abandoned building, and he begins to pull down on it. The entire building comes crashing down on Scorpion, and Spider-Man quickly turns back, asking everyone, "Are you guys okay?" The crowd cheers, yelling, "Hell yeah, we're okay! We were just saved by Spider-Man!" So he rushes off without saying another word, and as he swings by the bridge, he sees something. He calls out, asking if that's Mary Jane, and he sees Norman Osborn holding her body over the ledge, asking, "Hey, this look familiar, kid?" Spider-Man shouts, "You've already killed Aunt May! Isn't that enough?" And Norman laughs, "You have so little faith. Aunt May's just been placed under a deep, deep sleep for the last few months. In about 45 minutes, she's gonna run out of air and choke on her own vomit, but she's hardly among the dead men yet." Tick tock, Spider-Man. The stakes are especially high tonight, aren't they? And you only have yourself to blame. Spider-Man yells, asking, "What do I have to do?" And Norman tells him, "We'll pick up where we left off when I escaped from the cage. You forfeiting your own life in exchange for the life of an innocent." Spider-Man shouts, asking, "What is the point of all of this? Why, Norman?" Norman flies around telling him, "Because heroes need villains to keep them in check." And that's when the two of them hear a clanking sound. They look back to see Doc Ock climbing up the side of the building, his metal arms lunging for Norman, causing him to drop Mary Jane, and all Doc Ock can say is, "Kill Norman Osborn! Kill Norman Osborn by midnight tonight!" While Norman begins to throw his pumpkin bombs at Doc Ock, Spider-Man webs up Norman's glider, slamming him into the bridge. Mary Jane calls out to Spider-Man, but when he looks away, Norman grabs him by the throat and begins to squeeze. Norman tells him, "It doesn't matter who wins here tonight. We both know that we will both rise from the grave and do this all over again. It's what supervillains are supposed to do." As Norman puts Spider-Man down, Mary Jane yells to him, taking out her gun and opening fire. The bullets bounce off of Norman, but the recoil from the gun throws Mary Jane off balance and she stumbles, falling off the ledge. Spider-Man runs to the edge, shooting out his webs, making sure to be careful where he hits Mary Jane so that she does not suffer the same fate as Gwen Stacy. Norman gets back up asking, "Do you think you're getting a happy ending here? 30 minutes until Aunt May's oxygen runs out." He lifts the glider over his head, but that's when a metal arm reaches out, grabbing him. Doc Ock shouts, "Osborn! Got to kill Osborn!" So Norman turns his attention to Doc Ock, but before he can slam the glider down, lightning strikes the glider, electrocuting both of them. They both fall over the ledge and into the river below. Mary Jane asks, "What about May?" Spider-Man tells her that he's failed. Soon she'll be dead and she could be anywhere in this city. She could be. But that's when he stops and he shouts, I know where she is! Stay here! He hurries over to Aunt Ben's grave, rethinking all of the things that Scorpion and Norman said. Don't you think you buried enough friends? May's just been sleeping. Soon she'll run out of oxygen. She's hardly among the dead men. As Spider-Man rips open the coffin, he sees Aunt May sleeping there, peacefully. He reaches down, pulling her out, and he tells himself that he's going to kill Norman for this. Aunt May's too old and frail for this. And lightning strikes again with her coughing, asking, Peter? The next morning, Cap and his team search the river, only to find the body of Doc Ock with no sign of Norman. Black Cat checks into the hospital under a false name, but the doctors tell her that she's going to be fine. Scorpion was taken away, and the Tinkerer made sure to auction off his new suit. Everything begins to feel right with the world, but as Spider-Man looks over the bridge, he begins to feel sorry for himself. Aunt May walks up stating that Mary Jane said that he would be here. The man they sold their house to said that he would rent it to them for next to nothing. Plus, with them selling the apartment, they have more than enough money to cover all of the debts thanks to the housing market going up in the past few months. So, what's wrong? Spider-Man begins to cry, telling her that he's sorry, that she has to move back into that old rundown house. He should have been looking after her. He should have been making more money. He was supposed to be smart. May tells him that he is smart. He's the smartest boy that she's ever met. He's doing a job that means a lot more than just making money. He's shaping the future for children to be their best. Not to mention everything he does as Spider-Man. He laughs. All Spider-Man does is sell newspapers. I haven't done anything of real significance. She tells him it's not true. He saves lives. Tens of thousands of lives. On what planet is that insignificant? She hands Peter a bag with his costume, stating that he needs to make sure that he's warm under those clothes with all this bad weather that New York's been having lately. So if he wants to stop being silly, how about they go home and eat some wheat cakes? They should be done right about now. But elsewhere, a letter is being sent. One from Norman as a part of his many, many plans. The letter tells Peter that even though they've had their differences, he still respects him in the highest regard. That even though they fight constantly, there's never really been any real enmity between them. If it wasn't for Spider-Man, he would just be another boring businessman running another boring chemical manufacturing company. Be sure to take care and rest well as he prays for him. Signed, Norman Osborn. And there you have it. Marvel Knights Spider-Man Volume 3, The Last Stand. I hope you guys have enjoyed this storyline. There is one more volume to this. I'm not 100% sure if we're going to be covering it or not, as the overall plot is obviously resolved. We found out where Aunt May is. We know what's going on with Mary Jane, and we know what's going on with Norman Osborn. But overall, what did you think of this storyline? This is a cool, older storyline, in my opinion, of Spider-Man. I enjoyed it a lot, and if you want to get more stuff just like this right here at the Comicstorian channel, please consider subscribing to our channel and just turning on that bell so you get a notification. And if you want to get videos like this super early, because I believe this one came out almost a week earlier on our Patreon, consider joining our Patreon and supporting us in that manner. Either way, whatever you want to do, thank you for your support in general, and we will see you next time right here.